Welcome to the IABC International Podcast Video Edition. I am very honoured to welcome to this episode Carmen Simon, Ph.D., who is presenting one of our keynotes at the World Conference in Chicago in June. Carmen, thank you so much for joining me here on the IABC International Podcast.
It's a pleasure to be part of the program, and it's exciting to speak about communication in general from the angle of how the brain works as a neuroscientist, because everybody in your audience has a brain, and it's exciting to understand how it works.
So Carmen, let's start from the very beginning, from the point of view of people who don't know about your background. Maybe they haven't been on to the IABC website as yet to look up about your keynote. Give me the high level. Who is Carmen?
I am a cognitive neuroscientist, which means that I have a very healthy addition towards studying people's brains, and my specialty is studying memory. I am a great believer that memory is critical in business because your audiences will make decisions in your favor based on what they remember, not on what they forget. So from this angle, memory physically, not even metaphorically, moves the world. So it's important to apply things that I learned from my profession, from neuroscience and from memory science, to business so that you can find ways to become memorable and convince people to make decisions in your favor.
So let's go back even further. What was it about this specialism, this area of science, that interested you as a person?
I've become interested in this because I have been very humbled to note how much people forget when they're exposed to business content. We're recognizing that after 48 hours, most of your audiences are going to forget 90%, sometimes even more, of what you share. And not only do people forget a lot, but the little they remember is at random. So my interest in this field has been not necessarily to help people remember more of the content that they see and to help organizations influence what others remember, but rather to control the 10% that people tend to take away and maintain long term. So I'm not so critical about the 90% that people forget. I'm more interested in helping others have a good grasp and be very intentional with the 10% that others may take away.
So I don't want you to give away all of the key pieces of your session that you're going to be delivering, but is there something that can be a real standout, something that people can fix onto to go, oh, that's something that I could apply?
For sure. Let's look at a few guidelines that you could apply no matter what. So even from our interview here and our brief time together, I'm hoping that you'll take away this notion of control your 10%, because otherwise your audiences are not going to forget a lot, but the little they will remember will be at chance. And in order to control something, you have to clarify what that is. Given an amount of information that these days is highly abundant, can you at least have the clarity of one main point that you would like audiences to remember? Quite often when people work with me, I'll ask the question, do you want to be memorable? And sure, at some point the answer is yes. But then I ask, do you know what you want to be memorable for? Do you know what an audience should take away from the communication types that you're creating? Whether people are creating formal presentations or videos or podcasts, very much like this. This is a content media type, and we hope to be in charge of what others take away. The point is, given the amount of information you're sharing, do you know what people should remember long term? You're seeing here on my screen, I'm sharing some screenshots from a presentation that we were working on not too long ago. And you notice how there are some slides originally at random. Now we're starting to arrange them here a little bit more in a logical fashion. This is the after example. And notice how here, as you're watching my screen, there's a pattern that's starting to emerge, which means that the presenter of these pieces of communication is more in charge of what others are going to take away. And once you find something that you want people to take away, by the way, make sure that you don't muddle the mental model that you're helping people create in their minds. This is a non-example that I'm sharing here on my screen where somebody has found something that they want others to take away, but they're expressing that through so many mental models that it will be almost impossible for people to remember 48 hours exactly what you wanted them to remember. And there's one other criteria for your 10%, which you will enjoy learning. Once you have created it, can you place it in a physical context? For instance, as you're looking at this example on my screen, I was delivering a keynote not too long ago on the neuroscience of embracing change. And notice how I'm placing some of the points that I want people to remember in a physical context, such as this guy is here at the gym. He doesn't really know if he wants to embrace this kind of change. And there are 3 points that I want them to remember, and you can see them outlined here. It doesn't really matter what the points are, but the main guideline to remember is that 10% was placed in a physical context, because context is what people, not necessarily what people remember, but how people remember. So that is one point that I will clarify your 10% with some criteria that is linked to that.
Something that is very common with the communication industry, with professional communicators, is this balance of use of imagery. How much is there behind using supporting images or memorable images? Is there such a thing as a memorable image?
I really like that question, because sometimes people will say, well, what's more memorable, a picture or some text? And the good news for all of us, especially if we don't necessarily have a background in graphic design, is that you can make even text memorable, as long as that text helps the brain build mental pictures. And see, even in here, as we're talking about agenda slides, for instance, some people might say, well, are those words likely to be memorable, or would have this been memorable if it had perhaps a better picture? You can make any media type memorable as long as first you have the clarity of what you want others to take away. And also as long as it gives the brain a reward. Do you see, as I'm mentioning, I'm showing here on my screen, the difference between 2 titles that I had for a session that I was delivering just recently. The first one at the top simply mentions a topic. It's a storytelling science framework, blah, blah, blah. The second one gives the brain a reward, how to create memorable stories. Notice how neither one of this is associated with a picture, but you may still take it away or focus on it a little bit longer, and focus can lead to memory because the reward is a lot stronger. See, even in here, the picture doesn't even help with anything, neither does the title. This was for an investor deck we were doing a while back. But when we turn that into something that now has a reward for the brain, and of course the reward can come from the words that you see here, and the combination with the picture as well. But see, this slide would have been just equally as strong without the picture, as long as the words are rewarding in themselves. So as we're turning or connecting this point to the previous one where we mentioned control your 10% and clarify it, make sure that once you clarify it, you associate it with the reward, and from then on, even with words, you can become memorable.
Carmen, I have so many questions. However, I'm going to save them for when you're physically in the room at World Conference in Chicago. I always like to ask this question for those who maybe don't understand the application of neuroscience. For someone coming to World Conference who's got their tickets, who's thinking about the various sessions they're going to attend, tell me the reason why they should attend this keynote.
They must attend this keynote because we have to develop as a society a neuroscientific humility for how fallible human memory really is. And the reason we have to have this humility as we create different content types for various audiences is because your audiences will only make decisions in your favor and will follow your cause if they remember you. Memory is critical to decision making. There is no decision that the brain ever makes or will ever make unless there is memory involved. And of course, then the question becomes, how do you create memories for other people's brains? How do you earn a spot in somebody else's mind long term, especially given how fallible and malleable sometimes memory is? And learning how to get one of the most expensive real estate spots these days, which is a spot in somebody else's mind, is instrumental to being successful in business.
Carmen, I'm there. So here's the thing. I will be encouraging our listeners and viewers of this very podcast to go to wc.iabc.com to book their tickets if they haven't already secured their place. But a number of people may already be intrigued and approaching Google to find out more about you, but I want them to go to the right place. Carmen, is there an official website where people can find out more information before they attend your session at World Conference?
Yes, for sure. They can go to www.memzy.com, MEMZY. You can see the logo here on the screen. And on there, they will be reminded about the importance of earning a spot in somebody else's mind in order to influence decisions.
Carmen Simon, thank you so much for joining me here on the IABC International Podcast.